The Space Shuttle Challenger blows apart, killing all 7 people on board.
1 minute, 15 seconds. Velocity.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. It was a nightmare, a cruel, shocking end to what everyone expected to be another triumph for the Space Shuttle program. The Space Shuttle Challenger, with a school teacher and 6 regular astronauts on board, was consumed by a giant fireball less than 2 minutes after it was launched into bright blue Florida skies at 11:38 Eastern Time this morning. The path to space was filled with debris and death. All 7 people were killed. High technology, which we take so often for granted, turned on us. It was a tremendous blow, a loss so cruel, so unexpected that we're still trying to deal with it. The victims: Flight Commander Francis Dick Scobie. He'd flown in Vietnam. He was 46 years old. He leaves a wife and 2 children. Navy Commander Michael Smith, the pilot, also saw action in Vietnam, 40 years old. He leaves a wife and 3 children. Mission Specialist Ronald McNair, a physicist, was 36 years old, a wife and 2 children. Lieutenant Colonel Ellison Onizuka was an Air Force test pilot, 39 years old. He leaves a wife and 2 children. Electrical engineer Dr. Judith Resnick, 36 years old, a veteran astronaut. She was single. Payload specialist Gregory Jarvis was an engineer for Hughes Aircraft, 41 years old. He leaves a wife. And of course, the 7th crew member, New Hampshire schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe, 37 years old. She leaves a husband and 2 children. They died today in the worst accident ever to befall space explorers anywhere. NBC's Dan Molina was covering the launch from the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
It was a bitter cold but sparkling clear morning at Cape Canaveral. Here at the last seconds of the countdown.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
All the communications between the shuttle and mission control indicated everything was going fine. There was a sense of relief that the much-delayed flight was finally underway.
Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%.
Challenger, go at throttle up.
Challenger, go at throttle up.
It happened just over 1 minute into flight.
1 minute, 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
From mission control, silence. Then the bland, chilling report.
We have a report from the flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded. Flight director confirms that. We are looking at checking with the recovery forces to see what can be done at this point.
Slow motion. A search effort couldn't begin for some 15 minutes after this. Debris, they said, just kept raining from the sky. The head of the Space Shuttle program had no explanations, just sorrow at the tragedy.
At 11:40 a.m. this morning, space program experienced a national tragedy with the explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger approximately a minute and a half after launch from here at the Kennedy Space Center.
Computer-enhanced video shows the explosion in detail. What explosion appears to happen at the rear of the spacecraft, around the main engines, perhaps in one of the 2 solid rocket boosters. Then a blast higher up. The shuttle was instantly a blazing fireball. NASA has appointed a committee of top engineers and scientists to investigate the catastrophe. Orders have been issued to impound all records concerning the flight, down to the personal notes of all the flight controllers. Dan Molina, NBC News at the Johnson Space Center, Houston.
And from ground level on Cape Canaveral, today's disaster was witnessed by thousands of people. Among them were space officials, technicians, and the families of the astronauts. Steve Delaney was on the scene to cover the launch for NBC News.
The day began in optimism and high spirits after the frustration of yesterday's scrubbed countdown. As the crew suited up to enter the Challenger, one of the technicians there revived an old schoolboy tradition and brought an apple to the teacher. For the McAuliffe family and the families of the other 6 crew members, this was to be a triumphant day. Grace and Ed Corrigan of Framingham, Massachusetts were in the VIP bleachers along with their daughter Lisa to watch their daughter Krista become the school teacher in space. Their faces mirrored what happened a little more than a minute into the flight.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
The families have been secluded in the astronauts' quarters at the Space Center since just after the accident. In nearby Titusville, where the manned space program is the economy, the shock hit hard.
I just started crying and backed up and walked away because I knew it was really bad.
I wondered if anybody could be salvaged, from something like that. That was really the first thing that went through my head.
Vice President George Bush arrived here late in the day, heading a delegation bearing the nation's condolences to the families.
You must try to understand that spirit, bravery, and commitment are what make not only the space program, but all of life worthwhile. We must never, as people in our daily lives or as a nation, stop exploring, stop hoping, stop covering. We must press on.
There was a search in the Atlantic, but the searchers found so little that late in the afternoon, NASA conceded there was no indication of survivors. But that conclusion had been foreshadowed an hour earlier when the flag at the launch site was lowered to half-staff. Steve Delaney, NBC News at the Kennedy Space Center.
NBC science correspondent Robert Bazell has been covering the space shuttle flight since this program began. He's at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena tonight. And Bob, we were talking earlier, you were a friend of Dick Scobie. He had a premonition that something like this would happen someday, didn't he?
That's right, Tom. Dick Scobie worked with us on several of the missions, and in one in particular, I remember him telling me that one of these days the space shuttle was going to blow up. He said it was a large, complex piece of machinery with a lot of explosives, enough to get it going to 17,000 miles an hour to get it into orbit. He said, just like if you've taken enough airplane flights and eventually an airplane is going to crash, he said someday that's going to happen to the space shuttle. And he said, I certainly hope that when that does happen, it doesn't bring the shuttle program to an end.
Well, what about that? Do you think that the shuttle program obviously now has been frozen in place for a time? Do you think that we'll have to re-examine the whole concept of the shuttle?
Well, certainly they're going to have to find out what happened, and until they can allow another shuttle flight to go up, and that is going to bring the entire shuttle program to a halt until they do. Right now they're beginning a process called failure analysis, where they will try in detail, looking at those pictures we've just seen, looking at other pictures, looking at all the data that came from the spacecraft, to try to learn what went wrong, to try, if possible, in some laboratory to recreate the accident. One of the hypotheses, and it's just a hypothesis we've learned, is that a piece of fan in the main engine came apart, a piece of metal, and that flew into the main fuel tank. That's one of the very strong possibilities right now, but as I said, it's only a hypothesis, and it'll take a lot of analysis to find out exactly what the problem was.
Okay, Bob, and that main fuel tank, of course, contains 500,000 gallons of highly volatile liquid oxygen and hydrogen, and so it is an explosive bomb, in effect, that is propelling the shuttle into space. Our coverage of this space shuttle disaster will continue with reports on the men and women who lost their lives today, the reaction of President Reagan, and the school children that Krista McAuliffe. But Krista McAuliffe was a teacher, and a ride on the shuttle was the ultimate field trip. She wanted to bring the wonder and excitement of space back to her high school students in Concord, New Hampshire. And as NBC's Fred Briggs reports, they were waiting and watching today.
Her students were counting down with her. 4, 3, 2, 1. When they saw the explosion, there was confusion. Was something wrong? The principal and teachers weren't certain either. Then it got very quiet as the horror of it began to register.
Would everybody please go back to class at this time?
They did go back for a while, but at 1 o'clock school was closed. It had to close.
I felt as if my whole body blew up inside when I saw that. And I can just never be as shocked as I am now.
The students went home while the faculty and principal, Krista McAuliffe's colleagues, tried to collect themselves.
We were enjoying the entire event. We were celebrating with her. Then it stopped. That's all. It just stopped.
She had talked to her students in recent months about reaching for the stars. And now those students, members of the faculty, and her friends are reaching deep within themselves and trying to understand. Her training for the mission was shared with her students. She once told them that space exploration was in the future of every child. It was that kind of positive philosophy that led to her selection. She was one of 10 teachers chosen as finalists.
It's not often that a teacher is at a loss for words. I know my students wouldn't think so.
When she left her husband and 2 children in New Hampshire for Houston, her 6-year-old daughter Caroline wasn't very happy about it. Why wasn't she?
Because I don't want to go in space, because I just want to stay around my house.
But she wanted to go for her family, her friends, her students, and the teachers who were runners-up.
When that shuttle goes, they might be one body. But there's going to be 10 souls that I'm taking with me.
Fred Briggs, NBC News, Concord, New Hampshire.
Last July, in an interview with New York radio station WNBC, Krista McAuliffe was asked if she had any fears about her space shuttle flight.
I feel that space travel is safe now. It's not that earlier feeling that, oh, it's going to blow up or something's going to happen. The shuttle is a really good, safe program. Right at this point, I feel that I'll be okay if I go up.
It was McAuliffe's 6 colleagues who formed the backbone of this mission. 4 were veterans of previous shuttle flights. They represented a cross-section of our nation, born in North Carolina, Hawaii, Washington State, and Ohio, South Carolina, Michigan. NBC's Bob Jamieson looks at their lives in the space program.
These are the faces of the tragedy. As the Challenger astronauts walked to the shuttle this morning, dreams, not tragedy, may have been foremost in their minds. This was the first space flight for 41-year-old Gregory Jarvis, a Hughes Aircraft Company engineer.
I've been charged up since last March, and so this is kind of a culmination of a dream come true.
36-year-old Robert McNair was proud of the pictures he took in space. McNair said he had dreamed about being an astronaut when he was in high school. But growing up poor in South Carolina, McNair never thought this would come true.
You know, where I came from, you know, that wasn't the kind of thing a black kid thought about. You know, I pursued science with that in my mind, and it wasn't until recently that I saw a break to make a dream, you know, come true.
McNair is survived by his wife and a son 3, a daughter 1. 36-year-old Judy Resnick often said she had confidence in NASA's safety record, even though she had to scramble from Discovery when liftoff for her first mission was scrubbed because the engine shut down after ignition. Resnick was single, a classical pianist with a PhD in engineering who had found her life's work in space.
I'd like to stay with the space program as long as they want me as an astronaut if I can, and if not, I'd like to stay in some other capacity because I think it's very important.
39-year-old Air Force Colonel Ellison Onizuka was the first Japanese-American in space. He leaves a wife and 2 children.
I'd certainly like to stay in the program as long as I can, as long as I can contribute to it and be a part of it.
Challenger pilot Mike Smith, 40, tested planes for the Navy before he became an astronaut. This was his first space mission.
Well, I am excited, and I guess I look at it like I look at flying new airplanes.
Commander Francis Scobie was idolized in Washington State, where he grew up. This was Scobie's second shuttle mission, and he prophetically told friends that such a tragedy as today's was possible.
And we do these flights repetitively, and they get kind of a commonplaceness to them that's really not there, because each one of them is an individual technological marvel in itself, and you lose that by watching so many of them. There are a lot of things that go on during space flight, and it's not easy to do, and it may look easy from the outside. It's not easy from the inside.
Bob Jamieson, NBC News, New York.
A footnote about Krista McAuliffe: she received a gift from the space division of Caroon and Black, that's a New York insurance broker. That company gave her a $1 million personal accident policy for this shuttle flight. And an official of the company said the money should be paid to the McAuliffe family within a few